So, hello everybody, I'm Catherine Purcell, Chair of the Society of Jewellery Historians. Welcome to all our members in London, the UK, and around the world. We're so delighted that you can join us. Could I please remind you to mute your microphone and to turn off your video cameras? When the lecture begins, you can go to Speaker View and click your cursor on the speaker image, where a menu will allow you to reduce its size and enlarge the shared area. Our speaker will answer as many questions as we have time for at the end of the talk. Do use the chat facility in Zoom for this purpose, but can I ask you to use this for questions only? This will enable Jack to address them to our speaker after his talk. Any other comments can be sent via our Twitter account, posted on Facebook, or addressed to our membership secretary. I'm delighted to introduce you to our speaker, Akis Goumas, an award-winning Athenian jeweler, gemmologist and researcher in ancient goldsmithing techniques of the Aegean region. He is a member of a multidisciplinary group of archaeologists, scientists, and conservators studying different categories of ancient metalwork at the National Archaeological Museum of Athens and the Cycladic Museum of Art. He is also working on Hellenistic goldsmithing techniques at the Benaki Museum of Athens. In this talk, Akis will describe some of his research he has participated in and show how its results have so extensively contributed to his own jewelry and designs. Over to you, Akis.
Thank you very much, Catherine. Before I start my presentation, I would like to thank Mr. Jack Ogden and you, Catherine Nigel, and Society of Jewellery Historians for your invitation, and of course, all of you who are here tonight with us. I feel honored for this because something which I could never believe that will happen to me. As you heard, I am a Greek jewelry maker, but also I am a student of an ancient craftsman. You understand what I mean later in my presentation. The title of my presentation is Crossing Paths with the Prehistoric Craftsman. It's a game of my imagination. It is a journey. And I try to take you with this journey with me tonight. This journey starts at the beginning of the 21st century when the archaeologist Dr. Elina Stamattatou asked me to study with her a group of Mycenaean siltstones and explain how they're made. On the left, you can see a Mycenaean agate, which we studied, and then in the center here, you see magnification under microscope. And on the left down, maybe the tools which they use, maybe because we don't know, we just make experiments and judge the tool marks if they are similar or not. I couldn't imagine that 19 years later, I could continue this research project in the University of Heidelberg in the Institute of Classical Archaeology. Over the last 15 years, I've had the opportunity to work and share unforgettable moments with a group of archaeologists, conservators, and scientists. Through this experience, I gained valuable knowledge which I couldn't have as a classically trained goldsmith, and it's true, because you can't believe how much knowledge is you gain when you collaborate with archaeologists and anthropologists. Our collaborative project investigates Mycenaean goldsmithing, but we also want to learn as much as we can about the prehistoric craftsman. My task, my work in this team is to focus on tool marks, tools, techniques, gestures, orientation of movements, and rhythm of making. This means that first I study an object or a jewel with the naked eye. Then I use lenses, and then I see it, I observe it under a microscope. This, for me, it makes it, I can understand by changing stages of observation, I can understand better how it was made. I explained, with these samples I have chosen. This is a gold conical sheath from a sword pommel with a cutout decoration. Down here, we can see the size of the tool, of the cutting chisel with which the Mycenaean craftsman cut the surface. And on this slides on the right, you can see also a tool mark of a very sharp cutting chisel. If we didn't have any knowledge, if I judge it as a goldsmith, I could say that it was made out of a steel tool. But when we are talking, sharing with archaeology, they told me, no, there's no proof of having steel, so we have to find a different metal. So this guided me to try to make many experiments with alloys, different alloys with copper. And finally, I found out that an alloy of more than 15% of tin, it could make very sharp and very well-cutting chisels, but they are very brittle. So I had to work them as they were red, during the annealing process. When then we examined the results, they are very similar to the original ones. After this process, I tried to explain with drawings how they are made, and all the series of experiments, and continue the procedure of reconstructing the movements and practices of the Mycenaean craftsmen. I mean that I have first to understand all the steps and then try with the drawings to explain step by step. Like on the left, we have the handle, the hilt of the Mycenaean sword decorated with this gold embroidery technique, which I'll explain you later. And this is how it is composed from the two plaques, the rivets, and the pommel here, which is full of thousands of small studs. Also, like we see it on the right, is how from a flat sheet of gold, they raise it by using wooden anvils and wooden hammers to raise it to make this gold calyx. Maybe. Also, always there is maybe. And for me, a surface of an object is like a script. I have to learn its vocabulary. I have to see it, the failures and the errors that the Mycenaean, the prehistoric craftsman, the ancient craftsman did, so I can understand him better. So on the left, we can understand that this handle of the gold calyx is made in a lost wax casting. And you see it because of the signs here on the surface of the gold, because it was made on wax. I'm sorry. And on the right, we see a very, very fine hammering on the leg of this, on the lower part of this gold calyx. If you see it closer at the bigger magnification, there is a fantastic rhythm as he was making it. During this period of this project, I have faced many difficulties, but the most difficult period was when I realized that if I want to understand him better, I have to forget what I have learned or how I have learned. I have gained this knowledge as a goldsmith, silversmith, or as a maker. And I had to learn from the beginning. I have to learn by studying how he made them. So learning from an object, it was a totally new field of knowledge for me. These research studies have immensely impressed me and consequently influenced my work. Therefore, I would like to describe briefly 4 of these projects so that I can help you better understand my work. We have made many projects, but this one is also have influenced me in my work. During 2014, the organizers of the exhibition of the Greeks, which took place in the United States and Canada in 4 museums for almost 2 years, asked us to reconstruct a Mycenaean object so they can put it side by side with the original one, and also they wanted a video to explain to the visitors how it was made. We have chosen this Mycenaean gold rhomboid accessory, this here, from Mykene. It's from the 16th century BC. And for me, it was a big challenge to do it because I was wondering for so many years, seeing it in the windows of the museum, how it was made. If you see it on the left, you can see that underneath it has an engraved core. So in order to understand better how it was made, it's difficult to describe it without a video. I share with you a short video. I say short because there is a much bigger one. So I couldn't imagine that with a bronze saw, I could cut so easily a bone. All the tools I used here to make this reconstruction made out of hammered bronze. We don't know if it was bone or antler, but we made this experiment with bone. I gave the shape, and then I used a tool like this, which I explain you later. This is under microscope. How I found out that maybe this tool was used. Also, I used charcoal to see the motif better. It took me weeks to learn the movement, learn the gesture. I'll explain about it later. And all this taken with a microscope. Also, this is a tool which also explains how it was made to make straight lines. And it is a time-consuming experiment. I have made many experiments before do this for the video. We used all the knowledge that we could, maybe they have used. And here is the engraved. The thickness of the gold, for the original one is 0.35, but I use 0.5 because I was afraid to damage it. It was the first time I was working in gold. Always I was practicing silver. Here, when we saw it later under the microscope, we made the same mistakes. So I felt very close to him. I said, I find the same difficulties. And in this stage of the work, I asked the cameraman to stop because I was moved. I was feeling that he was doing the same thing as the prehistoric craftsmen were doing, the Mycenaean craftsmen. And I was feeling so close to him, I wanted some time to feel it. Because the first time, as I told you, I was doing it in gold. This is the final piece. It's not the same, exactly the same with the original one. Because we don't make copies, we try to understand how things were done. And the question, how we found out the shape of the tool. We studied broken pieces from similar objects, and we saw that the grooves here, which are engraved, had vertical sides, and not like this, but like this. So I thought that the tool had two steady and very sharp edges. I made many tools, but finally we found that this tool had made the similar tool marks. So we worked with this. Some months later, when other archaeologists saw our video, they told us that they found in excavation in Thessaly a tool like this, and they didn't know its function, how it works, and what is used. We felt very well about it. Maybe we're close to the truth, the true tool. And here are some of the tools which we used for this project. In 2012, the archaeologists were studying findings from Mycenaean cemetery of Diras in Argos of the 15th century BC. We wanted to understand how the Mycenaean craftsmen were working on granulation. It was a totally new field of knowledge for me, because I had to make my oil lamp, my blue pipe, learn how to manage the flame, the temperature of the flame, so I could make the granules, and then by using copper salts to solder them on the surface and between them. This technique was lost in Europe and was rediscovered during the beginning of the 20th century by an English goldsmith, Littledahl. But for this experiment, I also had help from another archaeologist of Romain Prévalet, who had studied this technique in Iraq before the war. So we combined this knowledge together and we continued this process, this project. This, we have chosen this conical bead, which is the dimensions are 2.5 millimeter wide and 1.7 millimeter tall. The size of the granules is 0.6 to 0.8 of a millimeter, not very small. And the thickness of gold sheet was less than 0.2 of a millimeter, very thin and very fragile. On the right, also you see another finding, also from this cemetery. There's a group of 3 leaves, but the interesting thing that they are formed with the anticlastic technique. Maybe the first findings in the Aegean region. I don't know if there is something else in gold, but maybe they are the first findings. But in order to understand our process, also I have a short video to show it to you. We have given the shape of this gold leaf in wooden and in a wooden mold by using wax to keep it steady. Then we made the holes with this sharp. We cut these square small pieces to make the granules. It was the easiest way to do it. Then by using the flame, trying to blow the flame, you can't believe how long time I needed to learn how to do it. And, experiments for months to control the flame and try to make not only one, but more than one. See, it's so beautiful from a flat piece of gold to make all these granules. Then I made a mixture of copper salts and vegetal gum, about 1/3 vegetal gum and 2/3 of fresh copper salts. And I explain you later what is fresh. All the tools are made for this purpose. Nothing was bought. So everything fits to my hand, my gesture. And I wanted the bigger oil lamp, stronger, better flame to solder it. I started to do slowly and raise the flame. See how beautiful it is. Slowly from 700 to 750, 800 degrees. This is when this becomes so red. It's close to 800 and something degrees here. And if I raise it more, if I could raise it more, maybe it could melt some, which we see that he melted on the original one. This is I had many mistakes. I had to correct them, but we didn't want to make something technically correct. We just want to understand how it was made. This is a very important lesson for me and for us. The error as a cognitive tool. This means that studying the errors and the failures, we can understand the prehistoric craftsman, and maybe any craftsman, we can understand him easier. So on the left, we can see that because he raised the temperature in this part here, he melted this granule. And also the other 4 were ready to melt. So he was focused in here. And because of the overheating, he made some holes also in the other parts of the bead. And he wanted to correct it by adding a very thin gold leaf, but he didn't solder it with copper salts. He used solder. And because maybe he was afraid to raise it that much, some of the solder didn't melt so well. For me, this was very human. I felt that I understand him better because also I could make the same mistakes. This helps me very much because we think that they are something very, very big, but they are humans and they are normal technicians, which they work for many years, and through repetition, they learn how to do it. For more than 3 last years, we are studying an extraordinary Mycenaean technique. It is called chrysokendisi or gold embroidery. It was first examined by excavator Professor Tsundas, late 19th century, who was able to figure out the technical process without having any contemporary microscopic technology. The Mycenaean craftsmen used this technique for almost 2 centuries to decorate the hilts of the swords of the elite or the kings of the Mycenaeans. They used thousands of small gold studs like this. The size of them is between 1.5 millimeter to 2 millimeter long, and the thickness is about 0.3 of a millimeter. They put them side by side like bricks, and then they flattened them, and then they engraved on the surface, so it was difficult to understand how it was made. On the left, we can see part of a sword from the cemetery of the Mycenaean cemetery of Diras of the 15th century, and here is detail of the pommel. So we can see how it was put side by side like bricks. And here is another hilt from another cemetery, Mycenaean cemetery. But because it is difficult to describe it also, I have a short video to explain one of the experiments, not the final, because we haven't finished it yet, and to explain you how it was made. So starting, a difficult part is how to cut a very thin, how to make a very sharp tool to cut a thin stripe of gold. The stripes had width less than 1 millimeter normally. Here it's wider, and the thickness is 0.1 of a millimeter. Then by turning, by twisting the stripes, the first steps are like this. Then I roll them on a piece of marble with a very hard wood to make wire, because they didn't have wires, as we know now. So they had to make it from twisted stripes of gold. Then with also a special made cutting tool in angle, so I can see the size of the stud which I cut, because it's not longer than 2 millimeter, 3. I made special made tweezers to bend it with a groove in the end, because I couldn't see it so well, so I could only by feeling. Then I make a mixture of animal glue and pumice powder, very thin mixture. I add it on the surface of bone. I let it dry for almost 4 hours. Then with the awl, I make holes very close each other. It must have a very sharp edge and square edge to make the holes. Then this is with the microscope, all these views you see now. These small pieces are like insects, they're very, very small. Sometimes you can hardly see them. I work with lenses. See the sizes, it's very, very small. Then I add a very small percentage, a very small drop of glue and put them together. Then when I put them together, I add a very, very light thin film of glue. After 2 hours has dried, then with a burnisher, I flatten them. As you see here, we have a long way to go to make something similar to him. But as I told you, we don't want to copy him. We just want to understand how he works. We need many more experiments to make something similar with his. Then he engraved, but the flow of the line he did, it's not like what I am doing now step by step. His line doesn't stop anywhere. He has a very, very well sharp engraving tool. And here I finish this experiment. And now I'm not studying only prehistoric jewelry or objects. Also, I have a project, a research project in the Benaki Museum, preparing the exhibition based on the Hellenistic gold jewelry of 2023. We studied this Hellenistic gold item of the 3rd century BC. This is a treasure from Thessaly. I collaborate with the archaeologists Irini Papageorgiou and the conservators of the museum. It's a very good team. To reconstruct part of the chain and the diadem. My work is to reconstruct a part of this chain and also to reconstruct this part. To study it, I spent more than 6 to 8 months to understand how all these wires were made and then try to solder them. The diadem is especially a valuable source of knowledge about the wire technology of this era. And now I have also a small video to show how I made a very short part of this chain. It's a research project for the museum. We're a big team, as you see, Irini Papageorgiou, the conservators of the museum, me, and the video player. Now the music, you don't have the music, but also we have a special music for this. Here I am annealing a piece of wire. The wire is made like the one in the Mycenaean period, but more advanced. Here we use also iron because it was known this period, and the cutting tools are made out of carbonized iron. So in a charcoal fire for more than 6 hours, I anneal them, and then I quench them in water, make them harder, and continue. Here I made the links, I soldered them. I tried for a long time to solder them with copper salts, but I couldn't because it didn't work. So I made the easy flow gold solder to solder them. But I had many problems. I destroyed tenths of links before to understand how to solder them, and because they are very small and they melt very easily. I had to learn to control the flame. This is the first stage. Maybe I'll stop talking to see it. There's a bridge link which connects the one row with the next one. To learn these so detailed movements, I had to work for months. And now square, maybe 1.5 to 2 centimeter long, I need more than a day to do it. All the tools are made for this purpose, made out of iron, hammered iron or steel. And I understood the tool from the need, like this one. I needed a tool to take the link up. I don't, my English is not so good, but you understand it through the picture. I couldn't force it, because if I force it, I break it. So it very gently work in small dimensions. The my fingers are very close one another to control the force, the strength, and the movement. And here, these are some of our publications. And here I finished with this archaeological part. And now there is the next part is tools and tool making. Something which I couldn't understand its importance before, to realize how important is to have a need and try to find and make the tool to solve this need and to help myself to express through a technique to express what I want to make. So in general, tools are not shown to the public or to the museum exhibitions. They, however, are the ones that support the craftsman during his lonely creative journeys. On the left, I have chosen a group of ivory or bone tools from the Mycenaean palatal workshops of the 14th, 13th century BC. Most of the gold which you are using are in very thin gold leaves and very gentle and fragile. So I had to find the tool from a material which could be very friendly to gold and don't damage it and don't harm the surface of the gold. I have tried tools out of copper, hammered copper or soft copper, also with bronze, hammered or not hammered, with wood and with bone. Finally, I found that by using bone tools, it was the most friendly material to work with these gold leaves. The movement was very smooth, and also it didn't harm the surface of these thin gold leaves. It was also for my hand very friendly. The movement was very smooth. And also here, I have some of the tools which we use in this research project, but also I still use them in my personal work. I'll try to explain you the process of making a tool. My work is first to see the traces on the surface of the gold leaves or other materials, to understand, to guess the shape of the tool which made them. Then by guessing or dreaming, I make a tool and I try to work with it and see if they make similar tool marks. If they make similar tool marks, then I let my body learn the movement, because this is a very difficult part. It's not that I have the tool, I have to learn how to use it. In order to make these circles here, I had to try it for weeks to learn the movement to be continue and then stop and then continue the next circle. So this was a difficult part. By developing the movement, I also developed the tool. Sometimes I need 3-4 times to change the shape of the tool. And when the movement becomes smooth and flexible, then the tool becomes an extension of my hands and my body, of course, and my mind too. And this is something which is difficult to explain, but only you can understand it by working in practice. On the left top, there is a very sharp bronze tool which I used to connect the circles between them. And then this is a tool which made the straight lines, because a blade cannot make straight lines. But if at the edge of the blade, when I added 3 teeth, then the blade working straight like a train. I was doing it very easily. Maybe they used the same tool to make these straight lines. And on the right, this is from my personal work, and through all this knowledge, I made a hammer with the head is from emery stone. And I want this hammer to give the final texture on the surface of the objects or some of the jewels I make. gives a very, very special texture. Hammering is a way of expression for me. It's not only a technique, but also it's a way that helps me to express what I want to do. I feel the moment through the hammer blows, their sounds, and the vibrations into my left hand. This means that both hands collaborate, and if the vibration is wrong, I know that the hammering is wrong. On the left, you can see my personal hammer, which is made out of special made bronze alloy, hard alloy, and the handle is made out of wild oak branch. It fits perfect to my hand. When I work with it, it's like playing. I feel it's extension of my hand. And on the left, you see me raising a bowl, a copper vessel, a copper container, using this hammer, but also using anvils, wooden anvils. I use wooden anvils for the first stages of raising, because I can change the heads of the anvils easily. Mostly I use old cedar wood. And now it's another part of my interests. As a teacher, I want to find ways to share this experience and the knowledge with students. In these workshops, I explain how they make and what means a personal hammer, a personal tool. And I explain them how to make it, because every piece, every hammer is very, very personal. They made it with the proportions, how their hands work, what results they want to have. By using them, and learning the technique of anticlastic, they raise and they make their bracelets from a flat sheet of copper. During this learning process, error and observation are the basic tools of our journey. This is something very interesting for me, to observe the result of the hammer, then change or to change the gesture or to change the shape of the hammer. So every time you hammer the surface, you observe the results of the hammer, and maybe you have to change it. Another workshop is to learn to make their oil lamps, their blowpipes, learn how to control the flame, and make their granules, make the mixture of copper salts and vegetal gum, and try to solder them on the surface of the material they have. Slowly, they understand the process of granulation, not by teaching, but by experimenting. It is a magical experience for them, but also for me to understand how the students understand what I am trying to share with them. Except these workshops, our team organizes workshops based on ancient technology for archaeologists, university students, and museum visitors, so we can share with them our research project experience. This is our point of our team. It's to share all this knowledge and publish it, so we can make a data, so the next generation can use this data to continue. Here is in a workshop in the University of Bern for archaeologists and anthropologists. And also here on the right, there is a workshop in the Cycladic Museum of Athens for the visitors of the museums, to explain them maybe how was the inside of a workshop and maybe how they were working. And now it's the final part, is about my work. And after a lot of writing, erasing, I decided to show you some of my work, which is influenced from all this experience and knowledge from these research projects. And I start from these. Some of the jewelry which we are studying are stitched on clothes, on the gold jewelry. So we are invited with the textile artist Georgia Gremuti to participate in an exhibition Spain, in Barcelona, and collaborated together to make a series of jewelry for this exhibition, combining these two materials. The colors are influenced from these Mycenaean frescoes. We spent a lot of time working together or separate, making, writing, practicing with materials to try to how to combine. And finally, we made a series of jewelry. This is a necklace. Georgia transformed or translated the granulation in another dimension into silk. And I worked as maybe they worked on stripes, on silver stripes to make this necklace. Also, Georgia added a very, very thin gold leaf on the surface of the hair granules to remind the connection with the studies on the Mycenaean jewelry. When I make something, I have in my mind also that the proportions of the jewel or of the object must be related with the human body and functionality. That means that something which you have to hold it or to use it in hands, it must be addressed with these proportions. I made this in Ahoy. This is to serve wine. It was influenced from this ceramic sauce boat from Attica of 3rd millennium because I love this shape. And I raised it from a flat sheet of silver of thickness 0.8 of a millimeter. All the first steps of raising were made on a wooden anvil with a wooden hammer, and only the last stage of planishing was made on a steel anvil with a steel hammer. The base of Inohoe is made out of olive wood, and the skeleton is out of forged titanium, worked in red. I'm sorry. I like this antithesis, this contradiction into my work, the modern and the traditional material. For me, it's like playing. Here you see, you can serve it in a glass. So I had to make this end to serve the wine by following the movement of the hand, or you can serve it straight in your mouth, which is nice. When I was working with this study on rhomboid gold accessories, I had to question my mind why he covers these so beautiful engravings with a gold leaf. Did he cover it to transform it a modest material to a valuable one, or to protect it? For this, during this period, I was invited to participate in one exhibition in Spain and one in Berlin, and I made a series of brooches and other also jewels inspired of this, because I have spent days and weeks to do it, and it had an impact of this work. And I made, this is one of the brooches I made. This is engraved bone, and also I made the stamps on pure silver and copper wire. Another characteristic in my work is a container. The container is a symbolic form in my work, a link which connects me with the human history and memories. Also, Neolithic pottery has a strong impact in my personal work. I love this very, very simple prehistoric forms. This is, on the left, is a ceramic container, the Skiphos from Neolithic Museum of Volos, from a Neolithic Sesklo in the Museum of Volos. It's a very interesting site. And also, I spent many hours when I studied these findings in the basement of the museum. Also, I share the table with other archaeologists or conservators, and they study fragments of pottery, of metals like this. And this has been an obsession in my imagination. The work which I'm doing the last 3-4 years made out of fragments. Everything made out of pieces, and then I tried to join them together to make my contemporary work. These are 2 rings made also for an exhibition in Berlin. They are made out of fragments of silver. And then I use pigments and mixtures of powders to give the feeling of time in the surface of the materials. More than 2 years ago, another group of archaeologists asked me to study this silver eton from Aegean, from the shaft grave of 16th century BC. It is in the National Archaeological Museum of Athens. It is so beautiful piece. It's destroyed, but it's so beautiful. I was impressed from the narration of the surface, from the balance and the distortion of the form. So 1 year later, I was invited from Michelangelo Foundation platform to participate in the platform and also to exhibit my work in Homo Faber 2021, which didn't work because of the COVID, and we'll do it on 2022 in a small island in Venice, in a big hall in palace in Venice. I made these 2 pieces, but one of the 2 pieces is this one. I made this container or vessel. It is made out of fragments of old silverware, destroyed silverware. This means that I collected old destroyed silverware from France, from how which they don't use it anymore. They are forgotten in boxes, and I cut them to pieces. I wanted them to be decorated with repoussé technique. Then I cut them to pieces and reinform all the pieces by hammering them on anvil and give them new forms and try to join them together as the archaeologists were doing to find out how the original object was. But for me, is a way to connect the tradition with modernity. The old craftsman, so this is why I want to keep his marks on the safe of the object. So I feel connected with all these people because in the drawers or the destroyed pieces, no one remembers them. This part is not a handle. It is roots for me. It's symbolic part which connects me with my past and my memories. I have spent these last 3-4 years a lot of time thinking and talking with archaeologists how this work with this gold embroidery worked and how a technician can work in so small dimensions. So I planned a project for me to try to follow this technician to his steps and work like he worked in a very small dimensions to see what is behind it. And also to understand where the skill meets with the creative imagination and how this can reach unbelievable levels of sensitivity and aesthetics as this technique is. It's not a normal technique. Someone has passed the skill and he became a very creative person. So this is a detail of the pommel which I showed you from, which now is in Denmark, from Dendra. But because I didn't want to copy, I don't want to copy him, but we want to understand him. So the last 2 years, I'm working on a study on rhythm synthesis with small, very short lines, black and white, light and dark. So I wanted to translate this personal project into metal, like this. And I started it by almost 3 years ago, to understand if by working on this project, I understand different, I develop myself in a different way that I was doing before. I made this brooch was made 3 years ago, and this is made about half or 1 year ago. I don't remember exactly. The way I work is that I make fragments that I join together to find the base. Sorry. And for me, I don't want to decorate or cover the space of the jewel. For me, it's like a script, as I explained before. Every moment is recorded, nothing is erased. It's like a symbolic language, a chronicle. After so many years of practice, I want to be free from any restrictions and let my embodied experience and through this process guide me to a new path. This means that I play. I let myself free. I don't have something in my mind. Start on one side, I have some tenths of granules, and the other side, some tenths or hundreds of tiny wires, silver wires, the size 0.4 to 0.5 thickness, and not longer than 3 millimeter long. And start again playing with them. Every day is different. Some days the result is like this, and some days the result is like this. This is why I say that it's for me, it's like a chronicle. Last year, I received a fellowship from Harvard, something which I couldn't believe that will happen to me. I received the fellowship. They wanted to continue this studies and also explain how my personal work was influenced from all these studies. I needed some weeks to believe that it was true, and then I had to spend hours and days practicing and experimenting to see, as a challenge, what I'll do, how I develop my work with this fellowship. And then I decided one time to forget that I have a basic metal and work with all these tiny wires and granules to make a surface, to create a surface, to make a chronicle without something behind it. I faced many technical difficulties, which I also continue trying to solve them. And when I made this presentation, then some days later, I received an email from Dr. Ogden, who told me that I would like to make a presentation to us. Also, it's something which I couldn't believe that it happened to me. It was both of them was gifts for me. So also it's a new challenge for me. I had to continue my work, and also I wanted to develop this technique to make another jewel, another brooch. And in this brooch, I wanted to make it like a dialogue between elements. This is the theme of my new work, dialogue between elements. This means that I connect the work I was doing before, the work I'm doing now after the fellowship of Harvard, and to connect it to the work we're doing now with Nikos Papadimitriou and the University of Heidelberg, studying engraving on my known siltstones, the first steps of my known engraving. And I wanted to change the identities of the materials. In this technique, in engraving, we use emery sand to engrave the surface. Here, I used the emery as a stone to engrave the emery stone. I engraved it with diamond tools by using also emery sand to see the results. And here I saw you this conversation between these two different expressions. For every piece of this, I need from 3 to 4 months to finish it. And if you ask what I have learned for the prehistoric craftsman, I can tell you that I have learned more for myself, because I spent so many hours focused on these small dimensions, which understand many things for me, the way I work, the way I think, and the way I solve problems. In closing my presentation, I feel grateful for the opportunity that was given to me and for my collaboration with the archaeologists, which are also friends to me. I want to thank Eleni Konstantinidis Ivridis, who is curator at the Archaeological Museum of Athens. Nikos Papadimitriou, who was by this time in the University of Heidelberg and now is director of the Museum Kanellopoulos. Irini Papageorgiou is archaeologist and curator at the Benaki Museum. And Romain Prevalet, who helped me a lot, he's archaeologist who helped me for granulation because he was studying it in Iraq, and he also brought information which different from one which came from Europe as the tools and as because he was experimenting this period with them. I also want to thank Mr. Yannis Basiakos and Gianna Filippaki, scientists in the Atomic Laboratory of Demokritos. Conservators Maria Kontaki from the Museum, Archaeological Museum of Athens, and Depi Kodjamani from the Benaki Museum and her team. And also Destina Gerulano, administration of the Benaki Museum, for her help and her support. Then Lucia Massei, director of the Alchemia of the Contemporary Jewellery School of Florence, and Anastasia Kandaraki from Anama, director of the Contemporary School in Athens, because they give me the opportunity, the chance to share this knowledge with their students. And Benjamin Ligniel, who is a good friend, he's a tutor, he's an editor, and he is a very good conversation partner. With him, we share ideas of alternative ways of sharing knowledge with students. Our cameraman, Dimitris Alexandrou, for his patience, and of course, my wife, Georgia, and our daughter, Vasiliki. Without their love and their support, I don't know if I could do all these research projects. But also, I want to say warm thanks are owed to the following museums, directors, curators, and conservators for allowing us to study material for our researches: the National Archaeological Museum of Athens, the Archaeological Museum of Nafplio, FRA of the Antiquities in Argolid, the Benaki Museum of Athens, and National Museum of Copenhagen, Denmark, Copenhagen. And because our journey doesn't stop, we continue our projects by studying in Archaeological Museum of Athens, Mycenaean signet rings, and also a series of gold kylix, how both they were made. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed, Akis. That was absolutely fascinating. It's a wonderful talk. I mean, it's the combination of the old and new. And I think it's so important that people that study old gold have some knowledge of goldsmithing today. They see a totally different perspective. So it was absolutely fascinating. Thank you so very much indeed.
For me, thank you very much. It's wonderful. Yes.
So just before I get on to the questions, can I just remind those members there that our next talk will be on the 23rd of November, when Uta Decker will be talking about sculptural minimalism and fair trade gold, philosophy, provenance and process. And that will be held at the Society of Antiquaries, obviously COVID, etc. willing. So we look forward to seeing the Society of Antiquaries on the 23rd of November. So Akis, back to questions. There's been quite a lot that's come in on the chat. What I'll do is I'll work through them, and we'll see where we go from that. So from Sarah Nehama, were the ancient craftspeople always soldering, or did they fuse the gold? Did you try that at all? I suppose that just means just heat without any kind of external medium.
Look, by blowing pipe is difficult to melt the gold. But if you work in a kiln with a long blow pipe, maybe you can raise the temperature higher, and maybe you can melt pieces of, if I understood well, to solder them.
It's rather than solder, so for example, with the chain links, just heating it so they just start to fuse without adding the solder.
Maybe someone could be better than me to control the flame better. It means that you must have a very long experience to do it. I have tried, but I couldn't control it. It was with a blowpipe.
Okay. Jill Clark's asking, do you know what the blowpipes were made from?
But I made them from bronze, and it's easy to make it from bronze.
Yes. Okay. Thanks. Most of the comments here are thanks, wonderful, thanks. Do you know what oil do you use in the lamp, and do you know what they would have used in antiquity? Because obviously a sooty flame's no good to anybody. This is
a good question. They used oil or something fatter than this, but because it makes it smells, it makes smoke, I can't work with it because I need another place to do it. So I use alcohol.
Yeah.
So this is why I don't have a so strong and so fat flame.
Okay, thank you. I think there's a lot of endless. You've got a lot of fans out here, Akis. There's amazing, fantastic, absolutely fantastic. Thanks, amazing, brilliant, illuminating. Do you think bellows were used? Do you know what I mean by bellows?
Yes, bellows not for soldering, but they use bellows if the pieces are bigger. I believe that they used kilns.
Yes.
So for the kilns, they used bellows to raise the temperature, and maybe at the last point, they used a blowpipe to raise it at the temperature they wanted. It's much easier if you have a temperature of 700 degrees, raise it only for 100 to solder them, or 850. Because of the copper salts, we can solder them in a lower temperatures.
Yeah. Okay, and if I may ask a question, in a previous conversation, we were talking about, or you were talking about, the purities of the gold was used. Could you say something a little bit about that? Because that was quite interesting.
Can you say the question again?
The purities of the gold.
Yes. Well, yes, this is how we met each other. Yes. I started that you have a piece of gold with 5 or 6 or 7% of copper, but after continuing annealing, you see that the gold comes on the surface of the gold, and then I put it in a mixture of vinegar and stipsy. I don't know the English name, stipteria. For some hours, it's hot, and then I clean it. Yeah. And after about 2 or 3 days of repetitions, I went to the laboratory of Democritus, and we saw that there was no copper, or it was much less copper. And it was very simple to clean it. Yeah. Also, we use it now to clean a surface if we want to make techniques with pure surfaces, like add gold thin leaf on a pure silver. We clean the surface in this way by annealing and then quenching it in.
Yes, there are mentions of that. I mean, in medieval times, they talk about just heating the gold many times to make it purer.
But it works.
It works.
It works, yes. Mostly in thin metals. I don't know what happens in thick metals.
Yeah.
Maybe you need more time.
And we have 2 questions, but I think we can come together from Rosemary Jeffries and 2 from they're both from Rosemary Jeffries. But what tools do you think were used to cut gold leaf in Hellenistic period? So presumably they're into using iron then. And the second, which is a very good question, of course, is what tools do they use to make the tools? So how would they cut copper or bronze?
Well, this is something which I don't know if I can answer it, but for the tools we used in Hellenistic jewelry, I have I picked old iron from old houses. I collect these pieces, which are not, don't have so much charcoal in them, anthrax. And then I make a charcoal fire, working for many hours, 4 hours at least. And I put the pieces of the iron inside of them. And then when they become red, I quench it in water. I repeat it many times. And then by hammering, the last stage by hammering, and then I sharpen them in touchstone. But to make a cutter, to understand how to cut a stripe of gold for this Hellenistic, because they are very, it's thick, 0.1 or less than this. And the white is less than 1 millimeter and less. To find the right tool, the cutting tool, and the right movement, I needed 6 to 8 months to develop the tool. He had it, but I didn't know. So I had to develop it. I have to, if Irene Papagirou is here, working together, it was unbelievable. And you need sometimes to forget. And then when you hold the tool again, then something comes in your mind fresh and gives you new solutions.
Okay.
This is why I need so much time.
Okay, and we have a question here from Maxine Lambie saying, do you think women made the chains and fiddly things? Do you think, I suppose, also children, but potentially as well? So,
oh yes. I believe children or women, yes, because you need thin fingers, very well feeling of touching, because they are very small. And also, I believe that people who make all these links and these wires have a very good feeling on the edges of their fingertips. Yes, I believe women or children would be perfect for this work.
Okay, and Neve Whitfield has a question here. Do you think if you look at gold filigree and granulation under the microscope, you can tell the difference between copper salt soldering and using a solder alloy?
Yes, there is a big deal. This is why we make many images, so we can help someone to see. When you use copper salts, the surface where the copper salts melt is like orange peeling. Tiny, small holes, which you can't see to the naked eye. And you see around on the surface of the granules and around them, a line full of this. And after this, everything is simple, everything is flat. And it is totally different when we use solder. It's totally different. We don't have this result. But if someone has a different idea, maybe he can, a different opinion, he can say it.
No, I think
it's only a result of observation, but I don't feel that I have the knowledge to say that this is only the way. But under microscopes and mostly under electronic microscopes, we can see this. You can see these details. Fantastic. The difference between the hard solder and the copper salts.
Brilliant. Okay, well, thank you very much indeed.
Can I just say that Judy Rudo asked, is there anywhere where we can see Akis's pieces in the flesh?
I don't make so. In the next exhibition in Venice, I sent 2 pieces, but I don't have so much time to make many. I make some only few pieces for exhibitions, or it's difficult to sell them because I have so much work. It's difficult to sell them. Yes.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Thanks again, Akis. That's fantastic. And to remind you all that this has been recorded, and so this will be available on the Society of Jewellery Historians website for members to see and watch again and again and again. I think it was a fascinating. I would like
to see it too, to see how is myself talking.
It was a wonderful talk, Akis. Thank you so much on behalf of all of us. Society of Jewellery Historians, and for everyone, all the members and the others, guests who've been privileged to listen to you. Thank you so much indeed. It's been absolutely fantastic.
It was an honor for me to share it with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed.